Okay, so it has been way too long since I've done a Pocher video. So, like I said, I'm still waiting on leather to do work on the interior. And so I thought while I was waiting for that, I would talk about the wheels, which I've been putting off because, I don't know, the wheels can be kind of a pain. So let me just show you what's going on here. First off, this is one that my friend's grandfather started, and this is exactly how it was out of the box. And I'm going to have to kind of take this apart and redo some of it. Let me show you what's going on here. Should have grabbed something to point with. Let's see if this works. So if we can get a close view of this, on these wheels, there's these little, I don't know if you can see that right here, these little ferrule piece, not ferrule, ferrule? Yeah, I swear, English. I have a hard time with it. But that little piece right there, it shouldn't be floating on the wire. That is supposed to be tucked down inside of the wheel here. And I'll show you why here in a second, why that's loose and why that's coming out. Now each spoke is a pair. It's one piece of wire bent in half, and it gets trapped between the metal part and the plastic part. And he didn't even get the other set in here. I don't know if he was planning on taking this off to do those, and he just had it on to do those first. I'm not sure what was going on there, but we'll have to take this off to put those other spokes in. And you've got these little pieces in here. There's one here, one over here. I think those are counterweights, and they kind of get shoved in there. Those are kind of a pain to get to fit properly. And so what's supposed to happen is once all of these spokes go in, then there's another piece that goes on top. I think I grabbed, not that piece. That piece goes on top. Obviously, those get trimmed off here. And then it gets screwed together with some brass threaded inserts that go on each side. So then this one would go on the back side, trapping the other spokes on the other side. So if we take a look at what it's supposed to look like, here's one I did. So far, I've only done two wheels. I've done these two. And as we can see, if we zoom in, notice the little ferrule pieces. I know I didn't pronounce that right, whatever. The little nubby pieces here. Those are all tucked in where they're supposed to be here. Also, one other thing to point out, the plastic pieces, and here's one of the plastic pieces that you build the spokes on, and you'll notice there's little grooves and notches for the spokes to lay in. And once they're all together, you go in and you cut these pieces out, which I'm glad he didn't do that yet, but you got to cut those pieces out right here. And this one is a little bit bent. I think something was sitting on it in the box. I'll have to be careful to pull that straight and not break anything. But right around in here and right around here, we need to paint that silver. Now when it's all together, you're only going to see just a little bit of an edge here because the metal piece goes over top of that and the metal piece over top of that here. So you're just going to see a little bit of a sliver around here and around here. But we need to paint that silver first. And I don't know how well this is going to focus, but again, you can barely see it. You can see some right here. That would be most noticeable right here. You're not going to really see inside here that well, but that is noticeable here. So again, that has to get painted silver. Now I kind of cheated and I just used a silver Sharpie. But for as little as you can see it, it turned out nice. I think it looks good. And if we take a look at the instruction manual here, and before I get to that, the tires, this tire, I got this online from a company that recasted the tires. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the company. I've got their card around here somewhere. I've gone to their website multiple times, but it's Scale Model Cars. I think that's it, Scale Model Cars. Here, let me show you what their website looks like. But they sell lots of parts for these cars. And these rubber tires here, here's one that's not on a wheel. They're nice and flexible, recasted. The Pocher tires that came with the kit, they're probably not going to be usable. And here's one that I had just cut in half. And I cut this because the sidewall here was all warped. And I think, not in this half, but the other half I think was actually cracked. These are just really stiff. And these are almost impossible to get stretched over the wheel. You're supposed to like put it in a pot of really hot water to make it softer. But of all of the tires in the kit, as I got it, the sidewalls were either way too warped out of shape or they were split. Like maybe they broke or split when maybe he tried to put it onto the wheel. So I wanted to see how they fit on the wheel. So that's why I cut this one in half, so I could kind of put it on here and just see for myself how they set on the wheel. So you can see this. You can see how the sidewalls are, and they don't sit in here very well. See, that one's caught on a screw. But it's almost like they're out around a little bit. There's a lot of gaps around here. They just don't fit well at all. But I wanted to see how it went around the wheel and what I was working with there. Okay. So these tires from Scale Model Cars, again, I hope I'm getting the website name right. But these these tires here, again, they were recasted. They are actually thinner if you compare them to the kit one. This is from the kit, obviously. They're thinner, and the tread pattern apparently is supposed to be more technically accurate, according to them. And again, they're much more pliable. The sidewalls are much more pliable. They're easier to stretch around the wheel. I had no problem getting the tires on the wheels here. They have a choice of white walls or non-white walls. My friend I'm building this for wanted the white walls, and he also paid for the tires. A few years ago, they were $35 a tire for the white walls. Now they're $55 a tire for the white walls. Now there are 6 wheels and tires total because 2 of them are spares. He only got 4 because at $55 a tire, that gets kind of expensive. So the plan is, the spares, they stack on top of each other like that. The bottom one really doesn't matter at all. So for the top one, I only cut 1 tire. I'm going to pick the best tire that's left, and I will paint a white wall on it, and that will become the top spare tire. And I might even make like a leather cover to go over top of them so you can't even see them. I have seen a few real cars that had like a leather cover over top of the tires. So I may do that. We'll just kind of see how that goes. So let's talk about building these wheels. One thing I do want to mention, and that is the stacking of the spokes. And there's a few different schools of thought for stacking the spokes. And as you can see what I did on this one, here's one spoke, comes up here, over and down, and then there's one on top of it, over and down, one under it, over and down. So the spokes, they just kind of have one sitting on top of the other. Okay? Somebody on some forum or something said that that's not technically correct. That's not technically accurate. Apparently, the spokes are supposed to alternate, top, down, top, down, top, down. And I tried putting them on like that. But the thing is, the plane that the wires go through, that spot where the wires go through, and the spot here that the wires go through, they're all in the same plane, which means that the wires are touching each other when they overlap. They're physically touching each other. And if you put 2 straight wires on top of each other, the ends are not going to be on the same plane, which means you have to bend them to get them into the same plane. Otherwise, they're spring loading apart. And apparently, to stack them in the way the real car is stacked in, to make it technically accurate, you really have to bend those wires to get them to bend around each other. And like I said, I tried stacking them in like that, and I was laying them in, and by the time I got halfway around, they were sticking up about 1/4 inch. And you really had to push and spring load them down. Again, if you bend them, you can get them to fit, but now they're all bent. Now, even to get them in here, you have to bend them just a little bit, but not near as much as you would with the other one, I don't think. So if you look at these, and you really have to look closely, this one here is bent down just a little bit, just a slight curve, where this one is bent up just a very slight curve. But it's not much. It's not even visually noticeable. The back sides are even worse, though. You have to bend the back ones even a little bit more just because they're so tight in here. But again, being on the back side, they're even less noticeable. Okay? All right, now, one other issue. The ring here. this ring right here, the inside lip is too small a hole, too small a diameter. And they don't go over the lip of the little, I don't even want to try to say it now, ferrules. Yeah, stop making fun of me. They don't go over that very well. So what you have to do is you have to widen up the diameter of this ring here. Now, I've watched a lot of videos on other forums. I've read posts and comments on other forums, and I learned that trick there on those other forums here, and I'm trying to find one of those rings that I can show you. Here's what they look like when they're on the sheet. Of course, you just cut those out. I'm thankful I have those other references, because it kind of gave me a heads up, kind of let me know what I was getting myself into and what I had to do. But there's a part of me that kind of wishes that I didn't see that, because I kind of am curious to know if I would have figured that out for myself. You know what I mean? I think I may have, but I don't know. I don't know who actually thought of the way to widen up that diameter. I don't know who figured it out, or I'd give them credit. I saw it mentioned a few times on a few different forums. But not only is this diameter here not the right size, but the outer diameter here is also not the right size. When you put that ring on the plastic part here, the plastic part has a little recess around here for the ring to set flat into. And on this one, I don't know if you can tell, but it's not down flat all the way. So there's a couple of choices. You can either take this to a belt sander or a file and just take the edge off of there until it sets flat into the recess. Or you could, I guess, just shave off that edge so there's nothing holding it up so it can set down flat. I guess either of those would work fine. But tell you what, let me get some of these parts cut out. You don't need to see me cutting parts out. You don't really need to see me trimming these little edges up. But let me get some parts cut out, and then I'll show you how to adjust this inner diameter here. Okay, so I believe I have all the parts pretty much prepped here. So again, on here, went around here with silver, and in here, both sides with silver. And again, most of that will never be seen. Same thing here, went around here and here, top and bottom silver. So you have two plastic parts. We have two rings here. This ring here, you can see the difference, okay? The thinner one, this one here, needs to be able to fit right in here. So I went ahead and did that. And I don't know how well you can see, let me get that in, but I just went around the belt sander until it fits into that ridge right around here. And you know, just looking at it again, it looks like there's a few areas, oh, it goes in, few areas that could got better. Okay, I'll take another look at that later, so I'll move on. All of the metal rings, so I got two bigger rings, a little medium-sized ring here. You've got this metal inner collar part, and two smaller rings here. I've already taken all of these over to the belt sander and the Dremel tool, because again, when you separate those from the tree, you're going to have little nubbin things left, and you want to make sure you remove those and make the edges nice and smooth all the way around. Now, the first thing we'll point out here, right here, they show putting this little piece in the skinnier ring, and that is the, well, I'm assuming it's the tire servicing valve. And I went ahead and put that in. That's easy enough. It's a turned brass piece. It's actually threaded on that end. It actually screws into a hole that was drilled in there. They show using a hammer to kind of peen over the end. And you know, it actually threaded in pretty nicely, but I put some CA on the back side just to keep it from backing back out. I don't really think I want to try peening it because I don't want to risk bending anything. So that should hold perfectly fine. I'm not worried about that at all. So I went ahead and did that. So if we start assembling these, just going with the first step here, we take this piece over like that. Now, One thing I was a little bit concerned with was working on it with it resting here. I didn't want to bend these. So I have, if I can find it, I have a ring, a metal ring that I use. I think this is it right here. And that should sit nice like that. Look, it's almost like it was made for it. I mean, it fits in there perfect. This is actually, it's a part of a ball bearing. This would hold the steel balls inside of the races. It's just a junk scrap part. If you don't have anything like that, just be careful that you don't put too much force anything when it's down here. But I kind of like to put that on there. It gives me a nice surface to build on. All right. And then in here we place this piece. It just sits down in like so, and you got to make sure it's positioned the right way. You don't want to put it upside down. And you can kind of see the curve. It shows you the curve here when you're putting that valve stem in. So that just kind of sits down like so. You make sure that's in properly, because it has to fit in the groove. You can kind of see here how it's positioned in there. And this one's not wanting to go in just right. Let me see. It's trying to. I think that's in. Tell you what, let me fiddle with this off camera. Okay, so I got that in. I just had to use a few tiny little drops of CA around there just to keep it from bumping loose. It doesn't snap in, it just kind of sits in place. So I just, again, a little bit of CA just to keep it in place until I can get the other parts on. Now, one thing that's very important, the valve stem. Notice how I positioned it right here. I put it between, if you see that little notch here and the little notch here, those are where some of the spokes will go through. And there's another notch right here. Okay, and it's not focusing real. Let me try to adjust the focus here a little bit. All right, that notch that's here, it's not just a notch. It looks like the shape of a T. It goes in and T's out. That's where one of the wheel weights goes. So you got to make sure you put the valve stem away from those other things. You don't want to accidentally have it right in front of the wheel weights. You don't want to have it in the way of one of the spokes. So as best as you can, try to get it in one of the wider sections here between some of the spokes. And here's another view right here, that T one. There's another wheel weight that goes right there. So again, you want to get it between the wide spaces where the spokes would go. Okay, so that's in. Next part we want to get in, get the focus. All right, so the next part is going to be this. Now this, yeah, it's sometimes some of these are rounder than others. You can spend your time trying to squeeze it round, maybe find some sockets to put in there and make them round. This one's not too critical. It goes right in the middle here. And as long as it's, it kind of finds its own place, as long as it sits in there halfway decent, and it goes around, pull that back out so you can see it here, it goes around a little shoulder. Oh, now it doesn't want to come off, I'm going to leave it. So it goes around the little shoulder that's around there, and it just kind of locks in right there. Okay, so that piece is fine just like that. And then next part is right here. Now this has to go clocked in a certain direction. You'll notice there's a notch here, right here, and on the wheel part you need to locate. My blade just fell out. Okay, you need to locate on this one. It's right there. There's a little nubbin right here that goes into that notch, and these are a tight fit putting in, but this just gets pressed together. All right, and it should be okay. I was going to say I may do this off camera, but we'll just see how it works here. So again, you got to line up the parts correctly there. Let me see if I get the light on there right. And just go straight down. just like that. You want to make sure that's all the way down. That will lock in the center metal piece here. I have a little bit of a gap, so it's not all the way in yet. And it will also help lock in this first ring that we put in. Okay, so going to need to keep pushing that down until there's no more gap between right in here. Let me get a view of that light. That's pretty close. Just keep working that down. And like I said, it's a fairly tight fit. So we'll just keep pushing that. And you got to be careful. Don't push here, because you don't want to break or bend those little tabs here. I'm pushing with my thumbnail on the edge here and right here. Okay, you don't want to break or bend anything here. So you got to be careful where you're pushing and just work that all the way around until it stops. Okay. And let me see how that looks. A little bit of a gap here yet. There we go. There we go. I kind of lied to you. You have to push here to seat that down, and there's another part here. So that gets pushed in. So as long as that's all the way in, and there's no gap, got to make sure there's no gap around here, and no gap around inside of here. Okay? So that just gets pushed down. I almost messed up. There we go. This part right here, I'm assuming, needs to be pretty good, because that one's kind of rocking weird. Because if this is crooked or not right, the wheel could be crooked. See how that went in here, but it popped out here? Yeah, let me mess around with this off camera. I'll get back with you when it's all on, because I don't think you're really enjoying seeing me squeeze and squeeze and squeeze. So let me get this done, and I'll get back with you. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. If we look at the fit here, if we look at the back side, you want to look at this ridge around here. Make sure that's even all the way around. You want to look at the gap right around in here, where the plastic part meets the metal ring, right around in here. And you can look at the back side here and see the gap around this way, and just make sure it looks as even as you can get it. Now, I'm kind of tempted, and I don't remember what I did with these, because I did these a long time ago. I don't remember if I glued these or not, because you could drip like solvent around in here. What I use is this stuff right here. So you could drip this into the seam right here, and that will bond it together, and drip some into the seam here, and that will bond it all together. I'm tempted to do that. I don't really think it's necessary, because once the wheel is all done, you have a brass threaded part here that threads into a part here, and that squeezes the whole thing together really tight, and you just keep cranking that, and it squeezes the whole thing together tight. So if there's any misalignment here right now, when those get squeezed together, it should straighten it all up. But if I glue it, that'll kind of lock that misalignment in. So I think I'm not going to glue that. And it's a fairly tight fit. It should be fine as is. So don't think I'm going to glue that. All right, now, one thing that I did mention, this ring right here, okay? This ring will eventually go on right here. And I mentioned that the diameter of the ring is a little bit too small. I need to open up that diameter more, because the way it sits right now, the ferrules, I think I said it right that time, won't get trapped in here, because that needs to be on the back side. Let me see if I can show you in the directions here. I think there's a pretty good picture that shows you what I'm trying to say. And let's just take a look here. If we zoom into that, see if I can focus on that. So that ring that I'm talking about is, which one of those would it be? It's this one right here. It's this one right here. It has to be over top of that lip of that little metal ferrule here. And this is a little bit misleading because that kind of looks like the plastic, but that's not really how it is, because that, if we look here, they actually have you press, when you put one of those on the wire, they have you press that into the plastic, okay? And then the ridge of that metal piece needs to sit right here to lock it in. The way it is now, they kind of sit over here, and then that keeps it from going down properly, it keeps it from fitting properly. And if you don't get those pushed down into the plastic, because if you try to force it on here, that pushes the whole thing inwards, so then it's not in the plastic part properly, and then it just pops loose and it slides down the shaft. So again, this view here is a little bit misleading. But let's take a look here. Let me refocus that. Again, if we take a look at one that I did here, is that going to focus now? Come on. Okay. The edge of the metal, you want that to be, see, here's the edge of the plastic here. You notice the edge of the metal is out just a little bit more, setting right on here, and that locks that piece in there. And so you see all these little parts sticking out. Again, I think that is how it's supposed to look. From what I've seen with other forums, other videos, other things, that's the way I believe it's supposed to look. So we need to, not that one, we need to adjust this a little bit so it will fit properly. Now this one's actually pretty close. It's actually pretty close. But the way we're going to do this, and I got to get some tools here. Hold on, let me get back with you here in just a second. Okay, again, I wish I knew if I would have thought of this myself, but I guess we'll never know. Now, it's a two-step process, but the first step is almost pointless, maybe? I don't know. This is actually the other part of this bearing here. This sat in here like that. So you can use this, and you place this on top of it, and then what you do is you take something that's already round, but just a tiny bit bigger. And most guys that I've read on the forums, they use a hole saw. You know, it's just a metal, you know, the hole saw, right? I forget what size they use. Let's see, that's probably about maybe it's a 2 1/4 inch. Don't quote me on that. But you find something that just barely won't fit, and you press it in, and that'll open that up just a tiny bit more. But that's still not enough to fine tune it, to fine tweak it. Now this one's almost close as it is. This one's almost good enough as is. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to fine tune and fine tweak it. And the way we do that, you get a socket, the size doesn't matter, and some channel locks. And you just put it around here like this, and gently, very gently, you just go through and you just get it seated here, and you just squeeze a tiny bit, and just squeeze, just move it, just keep moving it and squeezing a tiny bit. Okay? Now you would think that that would leave like a really wavy, like a waffled edge, but it actually doesn't. I mean, it still stays smooth around there. But you just work your way around here until that fits over all of the little ferrules properly. Okay? I think that's the best I've said it so far. Now, we can't really do a final fit until all the spokes and ferrules are in, and I'm just kind of giving you a heads up on what you're going to have to do. So you just put it on and you see how it matches and lines up, and then you fine tune and tweak it and try again, and you just go a little bit at a time until it fits properly. And again, you're looking for a fit, something like that, so it evenly covers all the way around. All right. Now let's take a look at the spokes. Let me get some of these tools out of the way here. Let's take a look at the actual spokes, because that's the part, well, I was going to say that's the part that's kind of a pain, but I think every part's kind of a pain. When we look at putting the spokes in, And they're showing us here. Let's take a look at this. Actually, they're showing us here. I think here they're showing us removing the little supports after the spokes are already in. Right over here it kind of shows us the way the spokes get stacked. So put one in, and then every other one. You just go every other one, and then you put the next one on top of it. Okay? But again, the ones you put down first, those legs will have to be bent down just a tiny bit. The ones you put on top have to be bent up just a tiny bit. And also we have to remember to put in the wheel weights right here. Okay? Those I found to be kind of problematic. They don't fit in the slots very well. I think I actually filed those down a little bit to fit better. So let's get a few spokes out, and let's see how it goes. Focus that back again. And now the spokes for the top, they're going to be the longer spokes. Got all the spokes in a little bag back here. We'll just kind of dump a few out. Those are, I think I just grabbed the short ones. Let me find my tweezers. And we'll just grab one of these. See what that looks like. That's one of the lower ones. Okay, so I'm going to do the lower ones after I do the upper ones. So those are the lower ones. I don't quite want those yet. Don't want to lose any. So let's grab a few of the upper ones. And we also need a bunch of those other little guys here. Get a pinch of those. 3 of them. I've got all my little parts in a little storage bin. Okay. And we just start assembling these. Now remember, the ones we put down first, and it doesn't take much of a bend. In fact, let me find, I've got a pair of pliers that I want to use for bending them because they would be the best ones. And where'd I put those? You know, it'd be really nice. It would be really nice if I was prepared, right? So we're going to put that one in first. So again, those need to bend up just a little bit. So I'm just going to start here, and just a very slight hint of a bend. Okay, not much at all. Not much at all. Again, just a very slight hint of a bend. All right, barely even noticeable. And then we're going to take one of those little pieces here, and there's a right and wrong way. Let me just put one on, and we'll show you what that looks like. There's one, and another one here. This is one of those, oops, I even missed it. This is one of those jobs where after you do, you do a couple of them, and then you just kind of take a break to rest your eyes and relax your eyes. Okay, did I get them on the right way? Looks like I did. So where'd my little pointer stick go? Man, I tell you what, losing stuff, can't pronounce words right. All right, so right here, you can see that end has a little raised lip, that end does not. That end, little raised lip, that end does not. Hopefully you can see that well. And that is what's going to get kind of pressed into the plastic. Okay, so let's go and just lay this in place. And I like to kind of put that point in first, and then let that drop into position. Maybe. And you know what? I lied to you. We need to get those points in first, I think. I worry about the ferrules later. And that looks like it's spread open just a little bit too far. Let me squeeze that together a bit. So just squeeze that together a little bit. And we'll try that again. Here, and like that. Okay, I think I squeezed it a little bit too much, but that's okay. All right. So now we need to get, I need to get different tweezers because those are spring-load closed. I don't want those. Here, give me a second. Let me find my other tweezers. Here we go. I actually found something halfway quickly that time. So we want to get this positioned like so, and that one positioned in like so. And then we need a common blade screwdriver. And yeah, like I said, it would be really nice if I was prepared, making a mess. There we go, this will work. And you just want to push that on right here, just to push that into the plastic. And it's helps when you actually got it into the groove. Okay, did that go in? I think that one's good. Now you could use, if you're careful, you could use the point of a soldering iron. And is that actually, it's kind of hard to tell what the instructions say. It looks like they're just using a screwdriver like I am. But you just kind of press that smaller outer lip into the plastic. Make sure the other one didn't pop out. That one went in really nice. This one doesn't feel like. There we go, it just went. Okay. So let's see if we can get a good view of that. Alright. Hopefully that's focused well enough you can see that. So again, the end that went in has like a little ring barb around it, and it just pressed into the plastic. And that end just sets in those grooves. Now it doesn't set in perfectly well, but that will work. Okay. Now I'm not going to make you watch me do all of the others, but what I'll do, and again, you do every other one. Do every other one, then you go back in and you put the top ones on every other one. And at some point we have to put the counterbalance weights in, which look like this, if I can pick that up. And again, if you look at the shape of that, that end goes into the T-fitting. Let me get a better grip on it. Goes into the T-slot area right there, and that just presses in. And again, I had, on the other wheels, I had a little bit of an issue with that. So what I ended up doing, let me show you real quick. I actually went in here with some flush cutters. This is just brass, it's plated brass, so it actually cuts pretty easy. I just went in here and I just cut off a flat like that and like that. So that fits into that slot better. And again, it sits flat this way. And I actually had an easier time getting it in that way. Okay. So, yeah. Let me get those spokes in. Like I said, I'll get all the spokes in, and I'll show you what it looks like after the first layer of spokes are all in there. Alright, so as you can see, I've got all of the first layers on, and I started the first one that goes over top. So this one, as you can see, goes over top of the others. You got to be careful when you're pushing those in. Again, you're using the tip of the blade, and you're just kind of pushing and rocking down until you feel it slide in. Some of them slide in nice and easy. Some kind of, you really got to put a little bit extra push behind it. You got to be careful though, because with these old kits, sometimes this plastic, it gets brittle. And on one of the other tires I did, when I was pushing one in, the plastic here just kind of broke out. Now, theoretically, you shouldn't have to do this, but what I will do is once I get all of them in, and when I get the wheel weights in, I'm going to go around this seam. I'm going to go around this ledge all the way around with a layer of CA, just to lock those in and keep them from falling out later. I think on the others I CA'd these points, but you really shouldn't have to do that because, again, this piece here This piece here will go over top of that and get screwed in, and that'll hold all of those down. So you shouldn't have to do that. But let me go ahead and get the other spokes in and the wheel weights, and I'll show you what it looks like after that. Alright, so all the spokes are in, and the wheel balances are in, wheel weights are in, and I put a little bead of CA all the way around. I got a little too much in a few places. I had to go back in and cut it out with an X-Acto knife, but I just wanted like a little bit like right here, just to help lock all those in so they don't pop out or slide out. Also, I put a mark here, just with a Sharpie, and a mark here so that when I'm fitting that, when I'm using the pliers in that socket to squeeze the edges to fit, I put it on the same way every time, so I'm not chasing the gap all the way around. And right there is, I think, looking pretty good. I think it's not as good as the first two. I think the first two I did actually came out better than this one, so maybe this will be one of the spares, I don't know. But anyway, so all that's left here is to screw that piece on, and then repeat same process for the other side, just with the shorter spokes. And when those spokes are in, then this piece goes on. Now you don't have to mess with the diameter here, at least on the other two I didn't, it just fit right on. And then that goes over to trap those spokes in, and that goes on to trap those spokes in, and then there's two pieces of brass. I don't have them handy right off the bat here, but you can see there's one piece here and that piece here, and they screw together. They go in and screw together, and that just clamps everything tight. And then you put the tire on, and that's it. I'm going to end this one here just because it's getting to be way too long, and I think you've got the idea. Again, it's just everything you saw here, just repeating that process several more times. And the last thing, I'm not going to do it, but the last thing is when it's all together and those brass pieces are squeezing it all together, you just go in with a really sharp knife and you just trim here and here. Trim all of those pieces off. And then go back in with some silver paint or Sharpie and just touch up where you cut off. And there you go, that's it, piece of cake. Just very time-consuming and tedious piece of cake. So, hopefully that helped, and as always, thanks for watching.